Hello, my dear friends. You're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 23rd of September of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, we're going to talk about the Kharkiv region, and first of all, about the Kupyansk offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation published an urgent report regarding the situation on the ground. The Russians are saying that the battle of the city of Kupyansk is about to be finished. Units and formations of the West military grouping are successfully accomplishing tasks to liberate the city of Kupyansk. That was stated by the Minister of Defense of Russia. They're saying that the Russians managed to capture 5,667 buildings out of 8,667 buildings. So the Russians, according to this report, captured 65% of the city and just 3,000 buildings left. So it's less than 40%. The Russians are saying that they managed to block a large grouping of the Ukrainian armed forces from the north and west, encircling them in a semicircle. Combat tasks to block the Ukrainians from the south are ongoing. Among them are forces from Freikorps units, terrorists from the so-called Russian Volunteer Corps, and special forces operatives from the main intelligence directorate. The Russians are saying that they managed to encircle up to 700 soldiers. It's about 2 battalions. Furthermore, the Russians are saying, they were talking a lot during this report about the value of the city of Kupyansk, about what exactly the Russians are able to do if they take the city of Kupyansk under complete control. Control over Kupyansk will allow further development of the offensive deeper into the Kharkiv region, including direction towards Izum and Chuguyev. So the Russians are saying that they don't accept the possibility that don't exclude the possibility that after the fall of the city of Kupyansk, they will move further in the direction of the city of Kharkiv and in the direction of the city of Slaviansk from the north. Furthermore, after the capture of Kupyansk, a direct path to Vovchansk from the south will open, meeting the advancing troops of the west grouping coming from the north. Along with this, the capture of Kupyansk will allow Russian troops to advance towards the Slaviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration along the strategically important road leading to the northern border with the Donetsk region. This will accelerate the establishment of control over Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, which are key defensive positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in Donbass. So if we return back to map, the Russians were saying that the city of Kupyansk is about to be captured. The Russians are saying, the Minister of Defense, that the map that you can see right now in front of your screens, the military summary map or any other mapper like pro-Ukrainian, neutral or pro-Russian resource, don't show the exact situation on the ground. According to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Ukrainians control less than 35% of the city. Most likely, the Ukrainians control just the southeastern part on the Ukrainian side of the river Voskov. The Russians made this report and this statement probably due to one thing. Most likely, the battle for the city of Kupyansk will be finished within a month or something like this, or even less. And right after the fall of the city of Kupyansk, the Russians will accelerate their offensive operation deep inside of the territory of Kharkiv region. The Russians reported that they will continue offensive operation in 3 directions. The first direction is the city of Volchansk. The Russians will move in the direction of the city towards the settlements of Veliki Burluk and Bely Kolodys. This operation can force Ukrainians to fall back from this area, otherwise they would be caught by the Russians in Cauldron and destroyed. Another offensive operation that the Russians were reporting is the offensive operation in the direction of the city by the name of Chuguyev. The city of Chuguyev wasn't captured by Russians in 2022. And the Ukrainian Kharkiv counter-offensive operation that took place in 2022 started exactly from this city, and the Russians are saying that after the fall of the city of Kupyansk, they will begin offensive operation in this area. The city of Chuguyev is basically the beginning of the Kharkiv agglomeration. If Ukrainians lose the city of Chuguyev, most likely Ukrainians in some period of time would be forced to fall back even from the city of Kharkiv. The city of Chuguyev is the eastern southeastern wall or south northeastern stronghold of the entire Kharkiv agglomeration. And the Russians are saying that after the fall of the city of Kupyansk, they will begin offensive operation in the southern direction towards the cities of Izum and the village of Oskol. So this is the third offensive operation that the Russians announced during this report, and this is very important offensive because if Russians are able to capture all these territories they just reported, this means that from the area of Izum and the settlement of Oskol, the Russians will be able to attack the city of Slaviansk and the city of Kramatorsk from behind. So the Russians will be able to finish offensive operation that they once started in 2022, but they failed at the beginning of the special military operation because the Russian army of 2022 is a completely different army in comparison with the army of 2025. So now the Russians believe that they can finish offensive operations they started in 2022, but this time they can finish this offensive successfully. We are talking about offensive towards Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, and of course the city of Kharkiv. The Russians, which is the most important by this report, stated that the Kharkiv offensive operation is a possible offensive operation, maybe not of 2025, but obviously of 2026 and maybe beginning of 2027. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Lyman direction where the Russians continue their offensive. Today, several pro-Russian resources reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the Lyman direction. The village of Derilovo was captured by Russians completely. This was confirmed by several very reliable pro-Russian resources. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians captured the northern part of the settlement of Novoselovka. So this is the situation, for example, by the end of the 22nd of September, and this is the situation by the end of the 23rd of September. So this Russian offensive operation in the northwestern direction of the city of Lyman started around on 20th of September of 2025. So this is the moment when the Russians began their final attack, and as a result of clashes, first the Russians secured the village of Shandarigalovo almost completely. Then we got report that the Russians captured first soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine in the northern part of Derilova. Then the Russians improved their positions on the Ukrainian side of the river of Nitrius, and today we got report that the clashes has begun or even has ended for the settlements of Derilova and Novoselka. The Ukrainians are trying to stabilize the situation, but we see that currently they can't do anything with this. Now we are moving to the most important probably direction, the city of Siversk. As you can see, the map has been changed significantly. We have changes to the north and northeast of the city, and we have changes to the south. First, let's talk about the southern direction. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the units of the southern group of forces took decisive actions and established complete control over the village by the name of Pereyaznaya. So we're talking about this territory. This is the situation by the end of the 22nd of September. As you can see, this village is to be considered as a gray zone or contested area because several pro-Russian resources up to 2 or 3 weeks ago reported that the village was captured, and today we got this confirmation, official confirmation from the Minister of Defense, and we have this video. This video shows us how exactly the Russians were fighting for the settlement, how the Russians were clearing one stronghold after another, and in the final part of this video we can see several episodes how Russians were raising their Russian flag in different parts of the village. The Russians raised their flag in the most northern parts. This episode was geolocated, and Russians raised their flag almost in the most southern part of the settlement. So based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense, we adjusted the map. Furthermore, as you can see, we start receiving lots of updates from fields between the village of Pereyaznaya and the settlement of Vyemka. In this video, we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine along fields and tree lines. Now we understand and we see that most likely the Russians are focused first of all before moving further in the northern direction towards the city of Siversk to secure these fields and to capture them. So most likely in coming days we're going to see lots of activities, and Russians will intensify their offensive actions exactly in the fields between the settlements of Novoselovka, Vyemka and Pereyaznaya. So Russians will try to capture these territories before moving further in the northern direction towards the city of Siversk and the village of Zvanovka, which is the next settlement along the railways towards the city of Siversk. The southern direction of the city of Siversk is not the only place where Ukrainians have huge problems. According to information we have, the situation is very difficult for Ukrainians also to the north of the city. As we can see, we have adjusted the map based on the video that was published by Ukrainian resources. And in this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, the territory of these facilities, with different explosives. And as you can see, lots of explosions were recorded. Some facilities were destroyed. Ukrainians were trying to do everything they can with the purpose not to allow the Russians to capture them. Anyway, we have adjusted the map. Of course, we had questions how exactly to adjust, and at the beginning I wanted to adjust the map using, let's say, this red line as if the Russians were attacking from the north through the river of Siversk Donetsk or from the settlement of Serebryanka. But then I changed my mind because I remembered that several days ago pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian resources reported that the Russians attacked in the area of the city of Siversk from the southeast, from this dense network of the fortifications and from the settlement of Verkhnykamensk. I would like to remind you this report that was published by pro-Ukraine resources on the 13th of September of 2025. According to this map, pro-Ukraine resources adjusted this area and added a very huge gray zone. So we believe that this is exactly the way how Russians answer this territory, and that is why we adjusted the map exactly this way. Now we see Ukrainians were caught in cauldron or were encircled by Russians to the west of the village of Serebryanka. Most likely in coming days, due to the critical situation, they would be forced to fall back from this area towards the settlement of Dronovka with the purpose to hold the lines in this area and not to allow the Russians to advance further. Now let's move further. And let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Kostyantynivka. The situation is very difficult for the armed forces of Ukraine because Russians managed to cross the river of Kryvyi Tarets and the railways and to capture the southern part of the settlement of Nilipovka. During the previous 24 hours, lots of episodes and videos were published from this part, how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in this part of the settlement. Now we have proofs that the Russians began offensive operation in the area of Plishevka. Currently there are very heavy clashes and the Russians are trying to outflank Ukrainians and to cut Ukrainians into the south of the Kliban-Buitska water reserve in Cauldron. Furthermore, we start receiving reports that Ukrainians began retreating from this area due to this fact that it's very difficult to save control over these positions. Ukrainians have no chances, most likely, to save control over these territories. If they try to save, most likely, most of them would be caught by the Russians in Cauldron. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians continue concentration of their forces to the southeast of the settlement of Kostyantynivka. The Russians are ready to begin offensive operation further in the direction of the city itself. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. According to information we have, there are still very heavy clashes, but as you can see, without significant changes or without different videos that can confirm that there are very heavy clashes. Obviously, there are very heavy clashes, but as for the previous 24 hours, it's not lots of updates to talk about. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation for the settlement of Ivanovka. During the previous 24 hours, very important video was published by pro-Russian resources and pro-Ukrainian resources. According to information we have, the Russians crossed the river of Volcha and entered the southern part of the settlement and improved their positions. During the previous 24 hours, we got two icons. This icon was published by 37th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And in this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in this part of the settlement. Based on this video, we colored the area. Furthermore, this information was confirmed by notes by pro-Ukrainian resources. According to this map, the armed forces of Ukraine of the Russian Federation indeed crossed the river of Volcha and forced Ukrainians to fall back from this area. This video confirms that the Russians intend to move further in the western direction with the purpose to capture the village completely and to establish a very strong foothold on the Ukrainian side of the river of Volcha. It seems that Ukrainians can't do anything with this offensive as well. If Russians take the settlement, if the Russians capture the village of Ivanovka, most likely Ukrainians will be forced to fall back even further deep inside of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Now let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. In the area of the settlement of Berezova, this information was reported by pro-Ukraine resources, and between the settlements of Novoivanovka and Novonikolaevka. As you can see, the Russians reduced their offensive pace of their offensive operation. Now they're moving much slower in comparison with previous days. Ukrainians managed to concentrate additional forces. Now neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are risking in this area. They try to stay on the safe side. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, because obviously everybody is waiting from Russia additional offensive steps. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, during the previous 12-24 hours, the pro-Russian resources published more videos of how Russians were bombing the city of Zaporizhzhia. In this video, we can see how Russians were attacking the industrial zone of the city of Zaporizhzhia with FABs. So this is the most important difference with other towns and cities all over the entire territory of Ukraine. The Russians, when they bomb, let's say, Kharkiv, or when they bomb Kiev, they use just missiles and drones. And when talking about the city of Zaporizhzhia, the Russians use FAB bombs, which increase damage that the Russians are able to deal to this area. During the previous night, the Russians continue bombing the area of the city of Zaporizhzhia, and some sources that reported that the Russians continued bombing the city also during the 23rd of September. So we see that the things are heating up. We see that this week is going to be very crazy, not just about the situation in Moldova and Transnistria. We see the situation is very interesting around the city of Kupyansk and the city of Siversk. So most likely we're going to see lots of changes during this week, and lots of very loud and very big statements made by everybody. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.